This edition of the Marietta Daily Journal podcast, presented by Carmichael Funeral Homes and Cremation Services in Smyrna and Marietta, celebrating memories you always cherish.
This is Amy Cargis, co-host of the MDJ Podcast. Make sure you subscribe and join Darren Sutherland and me every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for hyper-local news and information about Marietta, Cobb, and surrounding areas. Tell your friends and never miss an episode of the Marietta Daily Journal Podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the Sunday Cobb Life Podcast. This is J.K. Murphy, Vice President of Content for Times Journal and Managing Editor of the MDJ. For the last 180 days or so, the Marietta Daily Journal has been reporting on the coronavirus pandemic and its impact on Cobb County and its people. So far, we've had more than 18,000 people test positive for COVID-19 in Cobb. And on today's podcast, we talk with one of those 18,000. MDJ Life and Style Editor, Cobb Life Magazine Editor, and Cobb Business Journal Editor. All those jobs rolled into one and beautifully executed, I might add, by Katy Ruth Camp. Katy Ruth is here to share her experience as one who a couple weeks ago got the news that she was COVID positive. Katy Ruth is generally the host of this Sunday Cobb Life podcast, but we asked her to take off her interviewer's hat and take on the role of the guest interviewee to share with our listeners what it was like and how she felt after contracting the virus. Hello, Katy Ruth, and I gotta ask, are you feeling the least bit uneasy being on the other side of an interview?
You know, it's been a while since I've been on this side for sure, but it's a topic I've discussed with a couple of people so far, so I'm happy to share. Perfect.
So let's play spoiler and jump right to the end by telling Ruth, how are you feeling today?
Yeah, you know, I'm actually feeling really good. My quarantine ended yesterday. All of my symptoms are gone. I've done a good job of taking care of myself, just staying hydrated, doing a few things a day to keep the blood moving, but taking lots of vitamins, eating well. So I have to say, you know, to look on the bright side of things, this has kind of reset me to slow down and take a little bit better care of myself and drinking lots of water and trying to be healthy. So I'm actually feeling really good.
Okay, so I know you have your dogs with you.
I do.
Other than other than those pets, are you in solitary confinement?
I have been, yeah. My dad came down from Blue Ridge about a week ago to bring me some groceries just because obviously I couldn't get out and do anything or get anything, some dog food and just some basics. But other than that, you know, he dropped them off at the foot of my steps at the front porch, and I waved at him from the window and talked to him briefly. And I've spoken to a few people on the phone, but yeah, it's just been me and the dogs for about 2 weeks. So it's been a strange thing for someone who's very social usually.
Absolutely. So let's take us back to the beginning. So when did you first start having symptoms? When did you suspect that you might have the coronavirus?
Yeah, so a couple of Sundays ago, I woke up that morning with a sore throat, and it wasn't that big of a deal. And I'm usually prone to get at least 1 or 2 summer colds a year, and I know this year's been kind of wild with the weather changes. So I honestly just kind of thought I had a summer cold, but I later that day I've been taking a writing class online. And I noticed during the class that I was feeling a little bit feverish. So the next morning I woke up and I was still feeling a little blah. So I thought, well, maybe I just need to get out, get some exercise. So I put on my face mask. I took my dog up Kennesaw Mountain and I was fine. But coming back down, I actually slipped on a rock and sprained my ankle, which was, you know, perfect timing for everything that was going on. So luckily that night I stayed home as well, just because I couldn't go anywhere anyway, and I still wasn't feeling too great. But the thing that made me want to go get tested, that next morning I woke up, I answered some emails, then I made some breakfast. I think it was just like bacon and eggs and fruit. And I noticed that I couldn't taste anything that I was eating, which was very strange. And so I had a candle nearby, and I sniffed the candle to see if I could smell anything, and I could, but it was a lot fainter than it should have been. So at that point, I put on my face mask. I drove over to the Wellstar Urgent Care across from Kennestone. I made an appointment beforehand, got a COVID test. And, some of the symptoms that they had outlined, the kind of the stuffy nose, the sore throat. I had a little bit of soreness in one of my legs. I'm not sure if I had a fever because I never checked it, but I may very well could have had a slight one that day when I thought I might. And just the sudden loss of sense and taste was kind of the trigger for me. So I got tested. They told me it would take about 5 to 7 days to find out, and just a quarantine said, because so down a little bit, it might be closer to 3 days before I found out. So I just kept myself in for those 3 days. And by the time I had gotten back actually from getting my test, I walked in the door and I smelled that same candle that I'd smelled before, and I could not smell a thing. That was what was so wild, because it was like within hours, I completely lost my sense of taste and smell. And at that point, I wasn't really stopped up that much anymore. So it wouldn't have been because of a cold or anything. So I just had a gut feeling that I probably had it. So I kept myself in. And I got to tell you, not being able to taste or smell anything is just the strangest sensation, especially when the rest of you feels relatively normal.
So what was the time span there again when you first started sensing the symptoms and when you decided, hey, I better go have a test? Are we talking hours, overnight?
It was probably about 2 days, because I woke up that Sunday morning feeling like I had a cold. Luckily, I quarantined myself until Tuesday, other than the hike that I did on Monday, but I didn't come around anyone. It was just me and my dog. So that Tuesday afternoon was when I got tested. So it was about 2 days before I actually got tested.
Okay. And I have heard so much about the test itself, and most of it is not pleasant. So would you like to explain your experience with the actual test, what they do and how it felt?
Oh, you would think with something that's apparently this viral, they would find some other way to test it other than basically sticking a stick up to the back of your brain. But I guess this is what we have so far. Yeah. So they took my temperature, took my blood pressure, a couple other things. And then a physician's assistant came in, and she was completely covered. She had a face mask, a plastic mask over that. I mean, she was all about it. And I kind of joked with her afterwards about it, but she told me, she said, okay, it's this big stick. It looks like a big Q-tip, essentially. And then she just stuck that thing way, way, way far back and twisted it. I mean, I thought I was going to gag or something. I had tears in my eyes. And usually I have a pretty high pain tolerance, but I told her, I said, whew, that was not fun. And she kind of laughed. She said there was a guy who came in about a week before me, and she said he had this big muscle shirt on and looked like he worked out all the time, was this big tough guy. And all the nurses laughed because they could hear him across from the urgent care screaming and yelling when she did the test on him. So it's not fun. I have to say, it is not pleasant, but it's worth it to know.
So you mentioned this, but let's review. So you get the test and they tell you it's going to be 3 days or so to get the results.
Right. Uh-huh.
And then how long was it actually before they...
It was. So I got tested on Tuesday, and then I found out on Friday. So it was about 3 days.
And what were those 3 days like? Were you worried? Were you hoping you didn't have it? Were you hoping you had it and get it over with?
It's kind of mixed emotions, because, I know there's still some studies on this, and they're still not quite sure, but if I had it, from what I had read, the worst of the symptoms were usually in the beginning, and nothing I ever had other than losing taste and smell was really that bad. So I thought, okay, well, if I've got it, it's mild. I'd almost rather just go ahead and get it and quarantine and get it over with and build up immunity, and down the road, maybe I can donate some plasma. But then, of course, you start thinking back like, okay, who have I been around? And if I was sick, did I get anyone sick? Been safe. I haven't been reckless. You take the risk anytime you step outside of your house. And even if you're in your house, I know 2 people who got it just from getting groceries delivered. You just don't know. So I hoped if I had it, I didn't spread it. But part of me was almost like, well, I'd rather just go ahead and get it if so many of us are going to get it and it's going to be this mild. So I do want to add, though, that I realize that I'm very fortunate to have gotten a mild case. I know everybody who gets this reacts to it differently. And I've talked to a few people who had it, even people younger than me who had it, and said that it really, really was hard on them and was really bad. And so, I count my blessings that it was relatively mild for me, but, I know other people may not be as fortunate and haven't been as fortunate, obviously, because so many people have died from this. So was I doing absolutely everything I could in my power to not get this? No. I don't think any of us, when we step outside of our doors, we can try our best. I don't know how I got it. I can come up with a few reasons, maybe at the gas station or when I went to get lunch, because those were the times that were before my symptoms, and those were the only times I was out. But at the same time, I could have done more. I realized that, and I just encourage people to do as much as they can to stay safe. We have to keep living our lives. We have to keep getting out and doing things and going to the grocery store and working and that sort of thing. And, we're all at risk of this. Everyone's susceptible for it, but just be kind to each other and do what you can to stay safe, and just support each other through this, because we're all dealing with this in one way or another.
So you received the phone call. They inform you that you tested positive. What does the doctor tell you must do?
My symptoms, how I was feeling. I told her, I was generally feeling okay. I still had a little bit of stuffiness, but I had no sense of taste or smell. So she said, okay, that's good, because it sounds like it's mild. And she told me to quarantine for at least 10 days. And after those 10 days were up, if I hadn't had a fever in a couple of days, and if my symptoms had slowed or gone away completely, then, to proceed with caution, but then I could end the quarantine. She told me I did not have to get another test at the end of that to determine if I was positive or not, just because obviously if my symptoms were gone and I had been quarantining, then the chance of spreading it had gone away.
During difficult times, it can help to talk to a friend or neighbor. But once in a while, you need a lawyer. You need Atlanta's caring lawyers, Cawthorn, Knorr, and Owen. If you're considering ending your marriage, struggling with a stressful job situation, dealing with a devastating personal injury, or facing end-of-life issues, the team at Cawthorn, Knorr, and Owen is here for you. The Cawthorn, Knorr, and Owen team has been serving Marietta and Metro Atlanta since 1972. They believe that getting the best possible outcome for their clients begins with energetic and dedicated preparation. From starting a new business to planning an estate, Cawthorn, Knorr, and Owen have the experience to guide you through some of life's most challenging legal issues. So, the next time you need a cup of sugar or a ride to work, go ahead and call your next-door neighbor. But for the important life issues, turn to the experts, Cawthorn, Knorr, and Owen. To schedule an information session or case evaluation session, call 770-528-0150. That's 770-528-0150. Cawthorn, Knorr, and Owen, Atlanta's caring lawyers.
Okay, so I want to go back to the sense of taste. So you lose your sense of taste. Do you try some test products, like find some really strong blue cheese to see if you could taste anything, or?
Yeah. So it was wild. I actually texted one of my friends, AJ Brooks, who he's pretty high up in Wellstar. And I told him, I said, I got tested today at Wellstar, but I have no sense of taste or smell. I don't know if it's, a summer cold or if it's COVID. And so he was like, well, do you have a bottle of bleach around? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, just open the cap and just kind of take a little sniff and see if you can smell anything. And I did, and it might as well have been water. I could not smell a thing. And then I tried tasting a few things too that I knew would normally, signify some flavor. And I could distinct things between what was sweet and what was salty. But other than that, I couldn't tell you what it was.
So you obviously have to continue to eat during this period. So, what kind of thing? Obviously, there's no reason to fix your favorites if you can't taste them. So what was on the menu?
So I've been eating a lot of vegetables, a lot of just like eggs and light protein. I made a huge pot of vegetable soup with some diced chicken in it that I've been eating on, just because I really wanted to focus on things that carried a lot of vitamins or a lot of health benefits. And I figured too, if I can't taste anything right now, there's no reason to try to eat a cheeseburger or a slice of pizza or something fried, because it'll probably just make me mad that I can't taste it anyway.
So I know you took a couple of days off last week, but you're in quarantine, you're working from home, which we've been working from home for a while, so that's good that you're remote. But how else are you filling your time during quarantine?
Yeah, so I am about 50 pages from finishing the 4th book that I've read during quarantine. Luckily, I have a nice covered front porch and the weather's been great. So I've been sitting out there a lot with my dogs and reading and catching up on some things that I've been meaning to read. Or, you always have those books on the nightstand where you're about 100 pages in and you can't seem to finish them. So I've been able to do that. I've cleaned my house top to bottom. I think I've gone through every drawer at my house to clean it out. Taking care of all the plants in my yard. So yeah, it's actually been quite productive, and I've found ways to just kind of take some time for myself. And I try to work out about 20 minutes a day if I can, just to kind of keep the blood moving. Nothing too crazy until I knew that I was over this, because I didn't want to push it too much. But and I've just been doing some writing, some personal writing on the side, and just trying to get back into some things that, if I can't get out, I can't do things, I can't see people, then to focus on some other things that I've been meaning to do around the house. So I've tried to take advantage of it while I can.
Well, you mentioned 4 books. So what is Katy Ruth Camp reading?
Oh gosh, well, I finished Stephen King's On Writing. So I've been meaning to finish that for a while. It started a while back and then hadn't. So that's kind of like the Bible for a lot of fiction writers. So I wanted to read that. I joined the Book of the Month Club, which is like an online club. So there were 2 books from that I had been wanting to read, just fiction novels. And then I've got about a 500-page fiction novel called 9 Perfect Strangers that I'm about to finish probably tonight.
All right. So I know you've made it public that you've tested positive. You've been very open about sharing your experience here today and with others on social media. What kind of feedback have you gotten from your friends and those people who are reading your posts?
It's really interesting. The public feedback I got, of course, when I first posted that I tested positive, was very kind and heartwarming, and lots of phone calls and text messages and things like that. But what really surprised me were some people, actually a good number of people, who reached out to me privately and said that they had tested positive maybe earlier in the summer, or thought they had it earlier in the year, or even as recent as I had tested positive, but that they didn't want to share with anyone because they got the impression that a lot of people think that if you get this, you're somehow unclean, or you're unsanitary, or you've done something reckless. And that really surprised me, because this virus is so viral you really can't tell where you've gotten it from. I mean, obviously, yes, if you never wear a mask, you never sanitize, you go into places, you touch everything, you sneeze on people, then chances are, you're heightening your risk and your risk of other people getting it. But if you're doing generally the things that you need to, we all have to live our lives. We have to get out of the house at some point. We have to go to the grocery store. We have to, see people and do things and try to be as safe as we can. But there's no guarantee that when you do those things that you won't get it. So it was just very surprising to me that apparently there's this kind of underlying shame that people are spreading for people who get it. And, for the people who are spreading that shame, there's no guarantee that they won't get it, even if they are taking every safety precaution. So it really just kind of surprised me that is kind of out there right now. And I hoped by sharing it, and if more people will share that they've gotten it, that it'll kind of dispel some of that shame that's out there.
All right. We all like to pick up life lessons during challenging times. So what have you learned from this? What has surprised you?
Yeah, I think just taking time to slow down and enjoy things. I'm the type of person that's usually out and about a lot, or very extroverted. And when you have to take 2 weeks to yourself and virtually the only beings you're talking to are your dogs, then you learn a lot of self-reflection and focusing back on, my goals for my life and my time and my work, and doing some other things, and just taking time to breathe and read and cook, and focus on health. I have never drank more water in my life, I think, than I have over these past 2 weeks. And just seeing the difference that and vitamins and kind of taking care of myself has really done for me. That's certainly one of the things I've learned. And then also on the other span of that, I will never, ever, ever take advantage of or take for granted the taste of a nice slice of pizza or a nice juicy cheeseburger, because when you lose your entire sense of taste and smell, it is so frustrating to know that something is probably so good and you have no idea because you can't taste it. So.
Well, there you go. Lessons learned. So what's next? Your quarantine is coming to an end. And so how do you behave here moving forward?
Yeah, so it is officially over as of yesterday. So I'm still going to wear my mask. I'm still going to sanitize. I'm still going to do all the things. I'm probably going to still take a day or two to be at home and not get out too much, not push the boundaries too much, just because I'm fairly certain that, I'm no longer contagious according to the doctor, but still you want to be safe. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to continue to try to take precautions and do all the right things, but hopefully, it does ease my mind a little bit that maybe over at least the next month or two, from what they're saying, I'm a little less susceptible to getting it again or to spreading it. So I might, be able to actually go visit my grandmother safely or something like that. But otherwise, yeah, I'm just, I'm going to continue everything that I did before and just count my blessings that it was mild, and maybe down the road get an antibodies test, and at that point maybe donate some plasma too if I'm able to.
All right. Well, Katy, Ruth, we're glad you're feeling well. We're glad you were willing to share your experience with our listeners here on the Cobb Life Podcast. And we expect you back in the host chair next Sunday.
Yes, absolutely. We have some really exciting guests coming up, so I'm excited.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for the Cobb Life edition of the Marietta Daily Journal podcast from your local news source, the Marietta Daily Journal and MDJOnline. Be sure to pick up a copy of this month's Cobb Life magazine and visit us online for more complete details on the stories we've discussed, plus more stories that affect you and the people of Cobb and surrounding areas. Subscribe and share this podcast to get all the latest hyperlocal updates, plus great stories about what makes living in Cobb so special. Or ask Alexa or Google Home to play the Marietta Daily Journal podcast for you.
Share your thoughts or questions with us in the comments section or call the MDJ Podcast comment line at 404-997-8655. We might even share your comment on an upcoming episode. The MDJ Podcast is produced by BG Ad Group, Amy Cargus, producer, Jacob Sutherland, director. Copyright 2020, all rights reserved.
Thank you for listening to the Marietta Daily Journal podcast, brought to you by Carmichael Funeral Homes and Cremation Services in Smyrna and Marietta, celebrating memories you'll always cherish.